Day, everybody. Wow. This is interesting. It's so interesting that all of these revelations I've had the last couple of days finally culminated and ended up on a Sunday. Now, Sunday is supposed to be a very holy day. I mean, there's Friday the Sabbath, Friday night the Sabbath, and then you have Saturday. And then a lot of different religions have Sunday. And they go and worship and they go to different churches and temples and do what they do. And so it reminds me of when I was a kid, uh, listening to KGO radio. And KGO radio on a Sunday, there was this liberal, no, was it Sunday? Yeah, it was a liberal talk show host named Bernie Ward. And you can Google Bernie Ward. You're going to see some stuff about him that is pretty, whoa, like major taboo stuff about him. But he was very prominent with KGO. He was always on the radio during the week talking about all the different liberal current events of the day. And of course, being in California out of San Francisco, because KGO was San Francisco radio station and it was AM. And so I would listen to all the different politics. And Bernie Ward was always talking his liberal stuff. He was always slamming people and just coming from a very, very, very leftist liberal point of view. But he would also speak on Sunday and preach about the Bible on Sunday. And when you look at Bernie Ward, I mean, he looks like your regular dude. Um, Definitely have a hormonal imbalance. And because you can see just by what he looks like, he has a hormonal imbalance, obesity, and everything else. But he was like, not only being liberal, but he was also very, very religious and was doing the sermons or speaking on his show on Sunday called God Talk. And God Talk was just something, and I didn't get too into it. But then, what struck me is so interesting because I'm looking at religion, I'm looking at atheism, I'm looking at all the different meditative energy, and it's all about worshiping the body. And so it was interesting that, down the road with Bernie Ward, which I never would have predicted this, like maybe like 5 or 6 or 10 years ago, he was cited for looking at child porn and he was put in jail. And I'm just like, what the hell? Now, I'm not trying to equate that anyone that's religious goes in that direction, but it's very interesting that there is a lot of focus on the body and sexuality in different religions. And everybody seems to be focused on the body in some way, whether it's condemning someone for doing something with their body to then promoting a way to worship the body in some way, even if it's not directly saying, okay, you worship this, you worship that. No, it's like, what is God? Well, it seems as if when I'm watching that history of God and you replace the word God with hormones, you start seeing that everybody has God in them and everybody has evil in them. Well, what is evil? Okay, so God, in my theory, is all of the well-balanced hormones. That is what's everlasting. That is what people have equated Jesus, is that he is a representation of a very well-balanced person way back when. Okay? And so that is almost godlike. Okay? And then what is this thing with Satan and this thing with evil and this whole thing with that whole false dichotomy of like science and religion? Okay? They're one of the same. Science and religion are one of the same. They just have different words to explain the same thing. So evil is an imbalance of your hormones. Some may say, oh, it's the demons, it's the parasites, but that's just one aspect of how your hormones get triggered. Yes, foreign objects in your body are going to cause imbalances in your body, and it's going to trigger certain hormones to do certain things. It's not that these parasites are the things that control everything, of which some people, and I did fall into that for a minute with certain aspects of the conspiracy community, but I'm really looking deeper than the reptilian conspiracy, which David Icke is known for and propagating all over YouTube. I'm looking at the whole thing with evil. It comes from a hormonal imbalance. And so when you look at the different psychopathic killers to sociopaths to even cult leaders, they have major hormonal imbalances, obsessions, you might say. And then I look at the atheists as well as the religious types. And if they're so extreme in their belief system, whatever it is, it has the same outcome. It is a hormonal imbalance. It's an obsession over your beliefs that ultimately worship the body and cast judgment on how someone handles their body, or they're promoting a way to deal with your body. Abstinence to, oh, you need to do as thou wilt, which is like the whole Anton LaVey method, where there's like, you know, the only measurable thing in life is between now when you're born and then when you die, and nothing else happens afterwards. And so that's what these different religions and even atheism propagate, is the worship of the body. And so do people who do meditation. So do the energy healers. Every single belief system that has a specific focus on trying to figure out what the point of humanity is. What do you do today? What happened yesterday? Your predecessors, your ancestors. It all has to do with trying to intellectualize the meaning of life and the meaning of death. And how do you reach the next level of ascension, or the next level of another plane of existence. Now, this is interesting because I was telling you guys that my travels and my exploration of the spirit kind of started off when I went to Portugal, and Kevin prompted that whole thing because Kevin is very much in the spiritual side. So he figured out and organized to me go and meet with all of his people. And I learned about not only the divine through Peter Sage and then Sasha Day-Game, but also the Catholic religion and the holy site over there in Fatima. So that was like really, I don't know, man, that was so well, it was almost, I don't say coincidental. It was like, it was supposed to happen, because I started exploring that side and figure out, okay, the mind and the body and the spirit, those all have to align somehow. But I was only focusing on the mind and the body because that's what my whole focus with JJ's was, to get my body finally under control, because it was out of control. I was totally like sick and up and down with my hormones, and it was just insane. So that's why I started JJ's, to finally get some kind of control over my life. And so finally, last summer was an awakening of understanding people's perceptions of the spirit. Now, it took probably months and months after Portugal for me to finally figure out what the spirit was. But I was looking, another friend of mine gave me a book of crystals that I have underneath my mattress. And she said, hey, it looks like with all of your different revelations, it looks like you're ready for the next level, whatever that is. And I don't even know what the next level is. So that's fine. I put the book under my mattress, and that's great. And I'm still doing the J juice. I'm peeling back the layers. I'm seeing reversals in all my situations, going through the healing symptoms. And I get these crazy, crazy dreams. Okay. They're very, very, very vivid and colorful. And it was just like, oh my God. And it reminded me of when I was a kid and I'm flying. I mean, I haven't flown in my dreams in a while. So I started then looking at the spirituality in the dreams. That's my connection to whatever the divine is that people talk about, or whatever that higher power is, or whatever that God is. And because I've never subscribed to Catholicism, I was raised Jewish, but never really felt a connection with Judaism. Though they may have points in there that are interesting. When I was watching the history of God and how Judaism, it's one God, and then there's other religions that are polytheistical, like Greek mythology and maybe Confucius and Buddhism. And then I'm like, okay, so there's one God that oversees everything, and that maybe is that one specific thing that keeps the balance. And maybe someone can figure out if there's this one hormone that keeps the balance of all the hormones. Okay, and then there's the other, the polytheistical gods that are representation of all the different hormones and how they manifest in human behavior. So anyways, so I'm like doing this exploration and I'm seeing in my dreams that it keeps confirming my current situation, or it has me puzzled, and I look up my dreams and it has me puzzled. And then finally I get confirmation on what it is. So I would see some of them are obvious. Like if I'm in some kind of like turmoil or some kind of drama, then my dreams will reflect that. Just like a few years ago, like 10 years ago, I dreamt of being in a tornado. Well, I was in certain chaos at that time. So that would make sense. Tornado is elements in the universe that are in flux in a very aggressive way, no different than when someone has their adrenaline hormone coming to surface and they're on this fight or flight type of situation, the scenario. No different than a tornado kicking up all of the elements and causing this force, this energy. And can you see adrenaline? I mean, as far as the chemical composition, no, but you can feel the effects. You can feel the energy emanating from a person who is highly adrenalized. No different than the wind that kicks up completely aggressive. You can't see the wind, but you can feel the force. That's no different than these hormones. And so I realized that the dreams are my hormones, my biochemistry trying to level out, and they're fluctuating. And so then I'm like, okay. And then finally my dream started speaking to me that, oh, when I'm on this precipice of a new revelation, I start seeing specific images, like walking upstairs and a key in the lock of a door. And then I see my parents, and then I see just different, like I'm flying over a very beautiful, detailed geographical ocean type layout. And I'm like way high above looking down going like, wow, that's so amazing. And so I'm just like, all of those colors are like the different colors of the hormones that are in your body. I mean, when people do the ayahuasca or the DMT or all these different drugs to then bring up specific hormones that they call the spirit, right? That's what DMT is. And Kevin can probably tell you more about that. That's purposely forcing these hormones to come to surface to give you then this type of whatever revelation. And people do this. People go to different retreats and they fast and they bring up hormones, and then they have this whatever they think is an awakening. Okay. And so, so yeah, just the other, now I haven't been dreaming too much. Now I did dream about a maze, a couple like on Friday. What's a maze? A maze is like, there's something in my life that I'm not confronting. It's confusing. I have to deal with it. And it's trying to figure out and pick apart and find order. And then I started then making these realizations about God and about the hormones, and then about Adam and Eve, and the parthenogenesis, and then Mary, Mother of God, and Athena, and then looking at the original sin, and is original sin actually mutations, which then caused reproduction? And is that what evil is mutations? And then someone said like the mark of the beast, which is the antibodies. It's not the chip in your hand, which all these different articles out there lead you to believe. The mark of the beast or Satan actually is representation of all the different pathogens that cause antibodies to then cause mutations. And so that's why you see some people who are highly mutated committing very egregious violent acts in our society, and some may call them satanic. They are the devil incarnate. I mean, that's what I was watching with Morgan Freeman, how he was then trying to ask this psychopathic killer what incentivize him to kill a bunch of women and rape them. And the guy was saying, it's an impulse. I had an impulse to go and commit these acts that are anti-life, which caused him to be 1 out of a million who have this kind of affliction. And I'm like, he has some kind of major hormonal imbalance that is not prevalent in our population. That's 1 in 1 million, which when you have 7 billion people, that's a lot of psychopathic killers out there when you think about it. Okay? But still, luckily, they're not as prevalent because, or else we would see the decimation of humanity. But it's that what caused him to do this was the impulses. And this is what drives people, impulses. Their hormones, what makes you, you. And then we have the industries are manipulating your behaviors by manipulating your hormones, and they bring about a certain behavior, either a desired behavior or some other intention. And then you see all the different experiments and you hear about MK Ultra and the CIA mind control programming. And that is about manipulating your hormones with a specific intention and purpose and an outcome. And so then you look at the atheists and the religious people, and you look at what the practices of atheism, they worship the body in a different way. So you have a religious person who's going to church singing and these chants and talking about what good they should be doing. So that is trying to intellectualize a well-balanced type of person by telling them that this is what a good person should do. This is what a God-fearing person should do. Why would you fear God? Why would you fear the well-balanced hormones? Because just in case, something might trigger you to then fall into debauchery, into sin, we need to keep pounding into you every Sunday or whenever that you need to be this well-balanced person, this God-like person, this Jesus-like person. And that's what makes sense, because God is the ultimate well-balanced person. When all their hormones are perfectly well-balanced, they're not doing anything that's causing violence or causing all of the 7 deadly sins, right? And that's what's in the Catholic religion. That's an imbalance. And that's what I forget his last name. He was just like, it had a revelation to him when I was talking about hormones and God and imbalances and this and that. He's like, yeah, the 7 deadly sins, that is a representation of hormone imbalance. When you think about it, gluttony, that's a hormonal imbalance. I mean, let's just take a look at this just really quick. If I can even get there. 7 deadly sins. Now, when I was talking with Amelia Durant, she wanted to kind of equate it to parasites. But let's go deeper than just the reptilian type of belief system. Okay, hold on. What are the 7? Oh, here we go. 7 deadly sins. Lust, you have oxytocin. Gluttony, well, you have an imbalance where you are hungry all the time. Greed, well, that's obsession. That is the looping. Okay, when you're always trying to gain money for yourself and selfish, that is a hormonal imbalance. Greedy people have no boundaries. They will step on you to get where they want to go. Sloth, well, that's chronic fatigue. That's a hormonal imbalance. Wrath, that's a lot of adrenaline and passion for not getting what you want, because the body feels like it needs something. It's like an addiction, and when it doesn't get it, it then has an imbalance. It's like a psychopathic killer. Envy, when you're always envying somebody else's situation because somehow you couldn't get there, it's still an imbalance. And pride, so much pride is a hormonal imbalance. All of these, and now which hormones? It's a combination, because hormones, there are probably millions and millions of hormones, millions, because there's so many different nutrients. And all these different nutrients, the elemental composition of the human body, and then all the nutrients in the fresh fruits and vegetables, and then the trace minerals, and all those elements, all different combination of those different periodic table elements, they all create hormones. They all influence hormones in a specific way. So you can only imagine that even some of the hormones that you hear doesn't even scratch the surface of actually how many make up the human. And so when somebody says, oh yeah, you shouldn't enjoy the fruits of the flesh, it's all about the spirit. It's like saying that your body and your mind are disposable and only your spirit is viable, only your hormones are viable. And there's a lot of religions that believe this. There are people out there that are crystal healers or Buddhist or Catholic and maybe even any other religion that believes that the body should die but the soul lives on, thinks that the body is disposable, but the hormones are the only thing that is viable. And I'm going to say, no, that's a sign of an imbalance when you allow your body to be desecrated and die. Now, when somebody is practicing debauchery and they are worshiping the body by going to all these different porn places and they're dating, aggressively all the time, obsessing over having all the sex, that's the lust. And that is because of an imbalance, because when you are constantly chasing after the oxytocin hormone, that's eliciting reproduction. That's a sign that the body's under distress or in distress, and it needs to make copies of itself. Even if that is not your intention, the mere fact of chasing tail and trying and obsessively thinking about sex 24/7 or whatever it is, whether it's a drug to make you feel a certain way or to anesthetize you, that is a sign of a body on a death trajectory because it's needing to fulfill a need of keep carrying the species forward. Okay? So even the atheists that are like, there's some atheists that are like working out. They are trying to like eat the healthiest that they can. And they don't like, certain politics. And they're staunch liberals or staunch Republicans. That is, again, the sign of worshiping the body. So when you think about everything that happens in our society, it's about somehow manipulating or worshiping the body. It is a type of religion. It's a type of church. Even if you don't believe in church or believe in Jesus, you can call Jesus a made up, fairy tale, which some people have said that are atheists. But you think that chasing tail, or you think that eating all of these foods that are giving you this type of feeling isn't the same thing as somebody believing in going to church and worshiping the body of good and eschewing evil is different. No, it's the same stuff. It's all body. I mean, our whole humanity is about trying to stay alive. That's the whole point of life. It's trying to survive and adapt to the changing conditions. And so back when, when humanity first started, and who knows when, we have allegorical stories that may give us an insight on how it may happen. And then we have to read between the lines and say, okay, what was original sin, the whole thing with Adam and Eve? And maybe that was when the first time homeostasis was interrupted to cause and trigger reproduction. Maybe somehow there were two humans on this earth. Maybe there were two females. Maybe it was a male and a female. I don't know. Maybe it was. Maybe it was a male and a female that came onto this earth. Because you still have Zeus and you still have Metis. You still have Adam and Eve. You still have Mary and Joseph. So there is a male and female representation in a lot of these different stories. And then you look at, I guess, even Hindu and Judaism, Noah and somebody else. And there's, so, I mean, you can all look at your different religious texts and go find out and point out the different males and females in the Bible. But what would trigger some kind of change, like a reproduction, would be a homeostasis interruption. No different than, the dinosaurs becoming extinct from the meteors. They couldn't withstand that type of mutation in their environment. But maybe the humans sustained that, and so these extra heavy metals came to Earth and caused the mutation in their environment, which then caused an upset Yes, they may have adapted, but then there's a mutation that was never fixed. And so that's where this whole thing of original sin being passed down from mother to child for generations and generations is the whole point behind that story, is that that antibody that caused the mutation, and then other types of things that caused mutations, pathogens, then cause an antibody. So the antibody could be a representation of the apple, the poisonous apple, which then creates the tree of knowledge. Well, not tree of knowledge, but the tree of knowledge then has that apple, which, so maybe the poisons are the tree of knowledge. I don't know. I mean, when you look at the periodic tables, that's a kind of a tree, right? When you look at all of the different elements, and then it's like these different branches of different elements, and they all have a representation, and you put them different ones together, it creates things like a phone and a human and all this stuff, right? Then you have the trunk that supports it, which is our universe. And then you take in some elements that may violate your body, it causes a mutation. It may cause like a difference in how you look, because your hormones are now kind of going out of whack. Just like when I finally got my hormones balanced, I started seeing things differently. No different than when somebody takes a drug and they start looking at life differently. They're seeing things, they're feeling things, they're thinking things, they're paranoia, something else. When you drink tea, or when you drink coffee, or when you drink anything or eat something, it has you give you a feeling. Maybe you start being more meditative. Okay, so that tree of life is like representation of drugs that cause mutations and cause humanity to then be aware of things that they weren't aware of before. That's my guess. Okay, and I don't think it's too far off the mark. And I know I've offended some of my religious people on here, and that's okay, because I'm telling you, I'm going to be challenging so many different religions. I'm going to be. And I have lost many along the way. And I'm going to lose more. But I'm okay with that. Because we really have to get down to what universally makes us all the same. And that is our humanity. But the English language has divided us. And so now we have to finally get away from all the division, the different words that cause division, because words create worlds, then creates perceptions, and then creates division. We now finally have to say, okay, what is the common ground? It's the 11 different systems, hormones, and then how the elements in our environment impact our body. And that's it. So when you replace God, higher power, chakra, spirits, any ruach, whatever, with hormones, you start seeing the patterns are now finally emerging. It's not hidden anymore. But you have to use the right words, because when you use a universal word that everybody knows, and not these other words that are hiding the actual meaning, it's what was in the dark is now coming to light. And then you're like, oh my God, wow. So there's my Sunday morning live. I'm going to do my thing right now, but I wanted you guys just to kind of hear my perspective. And, you know, you guys are all capable of getting that godlike type of experience. Okay? Nobody is deficient. Nobody doesn't have the ability to be able to be godlike. Because they say everybody has the God in them. Everybody has good in them. Everybody has evil in them. It's a matter of how you manipulate the elements to then elicit a specific outcome. So you see good, you take away another O, and it's God. Good God. Evil, we're not going to say live. We're not trying to go there, Bridget. But evil is what is a hormones that are fluctuating. And there are some hormones that cause imbalances. Well, not some hormones. There are some actions and some things that impact your body that will cause a hormonal imbalance. That's what evil is. Because then it creates a death trajectory. It desecrates the body to where then someone only worships the spirit but not the body or the mind. Okay? The body and the mind and the spirit have to reside together on earth if you want to be a well-balanced person. Death is only a consequence when you violate the laws. Life really is the ultimate because everybody wants to live. Everybody is fighting for their life. Everybody is. Nobody says, I want to die today or want to die tomorrow. Nobody says that. So then you know we are universally coming from the same place. So let's now hold accountable and have our actions and our thoughts and everything be aligned with our belief systems. Okay, talk to you later. Bye.